Oh, life is good, huh? Our amazing accompanist here. You'll get the joke in a minute. Yes, because I know when you look at me, you think, Cherry's a fire. There's a runner. Right? Right? Exactly. So I guess we'll go there. So some of you may know that I, back in the fall of this year, signed up to run a half marathon, which then turns out time passes and all of a sudden the day comes and you're actually responsible for that which you said you would do. Having the good sense to realize I wouldn't do this overnight, I began training. But last Saturday, I completed my first half marathon. And as Linda shared with you, not only completed, but ended up being in the top 99% of those who finished. And we may have to relook at that math. That may not be actually true, but what I'm saying is I wasn't dead last, you know. So what an amazing experience it was, I have to say. It was really, what a wonderful stretch for me in many ways to get to participate in this experience. And so it was really wonderful because my friend Mike Folland, who is young and cute and tall and thin and kind of all the things that I'm not, said when I said this, I'll do it with you. Well, I've had moments of gratitude and moments of not gratitude that he said he would do this. Because then I realized, I'm really going to have to be accountable for this. You know, at one point I had the strategy of like, if I just stood in line with all the other people, they all run, I'll just jog off to the lodge, I'll have a couple of mimosas, about the time everybody else getting back in, boom. Da-da. But no, here's Michael. So as you, as you know, Michael finished 13th out of 400 people. First in his age group. I mean, he rocked it. Had they had a category for me, would have finished first, but they didn't have a grumpy old fat man category. So, so it was great. It was really wonderful having, it's wonderful to have a partner in life not partner in life, that has a whole nother connotation, sorry. Nicole's not going to be happy about that news. A partner in doing things in life. And so, it was great because we all got there. Now, I realized, being kind of the fat kid at the party, that this was going to be different. I'd already made peace with the fact that I might not finish first. I'd kind of made peace with that I may not be in that top. Well, they have a category. They actually have a category called elite runners. And I said, is that based on skill or on attitude? Because I need to know where to stand. So turns out it's on skill. So I said, when we got there, and here's Michael, fit and whatever, and I'm me, and looking around. Now, you're in trouble when Mike's looking around going, my God, these people are fit. It's like, I know. So it was great, though. For a while, we were neck and neck. And then the race started. And there's sort of this growing distance. And, it was... So I was kind of brought into this thing under false pretense, I realized. The way people market things. I heard Jell-O shots. I thought, I haven't done Jell-O shots since college. I'm in, Turns out they're talking about these little things, which are these like horrible little nutritious things that you suck while you run and throw them in the ground. So I've realized, there's different ways of approaching this. And I took, apparently the elite runners don't just stop when they have water. They drink and throw the cup, So I thought, litterers, So it was great. But I had, 3.5 hours to enjoy beautiful, I know. Yes, well, some people did an hour and a half. I did in 3.5. It's all about running your own race, it turns out. And so in looking at this, I had 3.5 hours to kill as I was walking along and enjoying the beautiful scenery, listening to my iPod, just, had a great experience. And if you go at a more reasonable pace, when you get to those water stations, you meet people. Hey, how are you? How's your race going? It was great. The elites, they just run right by and throw stuff at you as you're going. So I was grooving on my own little race here. But listening to my iPod, I thought, I wonder, I have this image. Mike doesn't use an iPod when he runs. I do, because it's a longer time, you got to fill that time. So but I had this imagery of if Mike had an iPod, his playlist would be, as he's running along like a gazelle, His playlist would be like Chariots of Fire, Wind Beneath My Wings, Amazing Grace, just this, look at me, just cruising through. Mine, on the other hand, was What Doesn't Kill You Makes You Stronger, I Will Survive, Gloria Gaynor, Roxy, Living on a Prayer, Sort of this whole survival mentality, like, how many more miles? But as it turns out, it was actually quite a wonderful experience. It was a beautiful, gorgeous day, lovely, lovely course. It was really quite magical. So magical, in fact, I'm actually considering doing this again. I know, call it crazy. So things I learned along the way. It's really what I want to talk about today. Is we begin a new series of conversations about the gift of change. And, sometimes we don't always appreciate the gift of change when it's happening in our lives. When the old is falling away, the new has been either thrust upon us or gently welcomed into our experience, more often thrust than not. And we're saying, why is this happening to me again? But there's a gift that always happens in any kind of change that's taking place. And I was looking at this lovely book that Marianne Williamson wrote a number of years ago called The Gift of Change. She teaches from a Course in Miracles perspective, but really we're all teaching from a spiritual perspective. From this idea that one of our fundamental tenets is that we are spirit beings. We have at our essence a component of being that is one with all of life. And it is that essence that is at peace, is wholeness, is love, is joy, is harmony, all the time. What's wonderful about being a spiritual being is there's nothing to get to. We already are. Now, that's not to say we always recognize it, is it? But in that state of being, we realize who we are. But the way of the world would have us believe that it is the external that defines who we are. The roles we play in life, the things that we do, the things that we've accomplished, the things that we've not accomplished. There are our areas of success, our areas of failure. Those are so often the way we begin to define ourselves. And as I look around the world in which we live, which puts a high value on these things of the world, our success is judged by the money that we have or the position that we've achieved. And as I look around at that, I think sometimes that there's a big piece missing. For me, the spiritual journey has been about re-identifying myself. Rather than with the things of the world, with the things of the ego, I now choose to identify myself as spirit. And what I know about spirit is that it is always eternal, deathless, changeless being. And yet the form in which it is expressing is always changing. You may have noticed this in your own life. You may have noticed how that little 6, 7, 8, 10 pounds of being that came into the world all those years ago has changed and evolved. Grown up, for some of us grown out, changed. And yet there's some part of us that is identified the same. Isn't it interesting? That you might not see anyone for 20 years and we might look different, but you still know oh, that's so-and-so. And so the Spirit is the essence of who we are. It is closed in form. The form changes and evolves. And at some point, the form is released and we move on to the next experience of life. And so what I recognize is when we identify ourselves with the outer, with the things of form, then when form changes, we can be devastated. We lose a job, we lose a house, we lose a relationship, we lose any number of things because life is always changing. And when we have identified ourselves as that, the question becomes, who am I now? For me, beginning to be able to answer that question, who am I now, the answer is very much the same. Because now, having identified myself as spiritual being, then what I realize is I am spirit having this experience. I am spirit having the experience of 55, waddling around a 13-mile course, right? And if I wanted to hold on to the 21-year-old that used to do that with ease, then I would judge who I am now based on who I used to be. Have you ever noticed how often we spend time in either wanting to hold on to what was or trying to project what should be? And in that process, we often miss what is. What's happening now? And so the opportunity for all of us, particularly, I believe, as life is accelerating, change is happening at such a phenomenal rate. You know, it wasn't that many years ago. Don't say it, Linda. I can see you thinking it. It wasn't that many years ago when I was kind of hip, up, and cool with computers, you know. These new things called desktop computers were coming into the marketplace. And I remember I bought my first personal computer, PCs, remember those? $3,000. Now, this was no ordinary computer because it had a color monitor. And no longer the 10 megabyte hard disk that we used to have, but this one had a 20. I mean, we were talking smoking stuff, right? And remember how we used to have to type in C:// remember all that whole thing? And I was cool. Now you know what I've realized? I've become my dad. I remember back in the day when we were introducing this whole thing, and he'd say, I just want to hit one button and get the answer I want. It's like, you can't do that. You have to hit C:// It's like, I just want. Now I'm like, which button do I hit? I just want to know what I want. So, you know, but look at what's happening around us. Look at just in the last few years, some 40% of people now are accessing the internet from their smartphone. There is no computer. Isn't that amazing? So here we are in this time of accelerated change, and if we think that our identity is based upon the form, then we're constantly buffeted by life that is continuing to change, continuing to accelerate, to continue to be different from what was. But when we learn to appreciate ourselves as spirit beings who evolve and change and grow and express into life, then we can move into that place of centeredness and appreciation. For we begin to realize that it is this moment that is the precious thing. We take our awareness out of what was. We take our awareness away from what should be to recognize and realize that it is this moment right here and right now that is the precious moment. And how often do we forget that? Sometimes in pursuit of all of these other things, we get lost. So I was reflecting on this idea that all of life is growth and change and evolution. And there is a process of life that is called assimilation, circulation, and elimination. Now, Think about your body. You eat food, it circulates through the body, you eliminate food. Everybody poops. There's this book out, right? I love that there's a book out now called Everybody Poops. The kids actually, we didn't. When I was a kid, nobody pooped. Now, it's okay, you know? It's a new world we live in, you know? We talk about things openly. Crazy. Change has happened. Right? But if you think about that process of life, everything is about assimilation, circulation, and elimination. So too with our spiritual journey, I find the same thing, is that we are bringing in new insight, new information, new awareness, and wouldn't it be great? Here would be a great program. When I get to run the universe, here's how it'll be. You just have the insight and everything changes. Right? Oh, I'm rich. Boom. Right? How cool would that be? But no, apparently you have to have first the thought, and then the thought has to become part of the consciousness. We call it about embodying a concept. It has to become part of our belief system. It has to become part of our reality. And then once it has become part of our reality, it becomes part of our experience. But we also have to eliminate that which no longer serves us. You see, Holmes, I was just reading recently, he said, we can't continue to hold thoughts and speak of lack and limitation and then expect to manifest abundance and prosperity. You see, what we think about and talk about and act on is what becomes our experience. And so if our affirmation every day is, I'm so broke, I'm so broke, I'm so broke, the experience that life brings to us is a reflection of what we have assimilated and circulated. So we want to eliminate that idea as we're bringing in the new concepts of living in joy and in abundance. And so it's a wonderful thing as we're embracing this art of becoming, to recognize that the art of becoming first starts with the art of being. Being present, being in this moment, being conscious, being aware, being that concept and idea that we want to have expressed in our lives. And then we learn to love ourselves as we are, as who we are, and that then creates the place for us to become who we wish to be. So often we want to hold ourselves hostage to what has been, to who we've been, and we say, when this happens, then I'll be lovable. When I create more money in my life, then I'll be abundant. I was reading a wonderful little book Linda shared with me by John Huntsman. You may have heard of him, kind of a billionaire kind of guy. And gave us a cancer institute and all kinds of other wonderful philanthropic things. And one of the things that struck me in this, as I've been kind of leafing through this wonderful book, he talks about some really basic things. Like handshakes should be more important than lawyers. That what happened to the days when we shook hands and said, I am my word, you can count on it, you can take it to the bank. He's saying, the concept is cheaters never win. Is that when we show up in integrity with who we are, and we live according to the principles that we hold, then that becomes our experience. Loved a particular idea that he was sharing is that before he had any money, he came from nothing, right? He was tithing, not because he was waiting for the money, but because he believed that was the principle, and I believe that was part of the principle, the concept, as we've talked about, of tithing, of giving back to the universe and accepting that we're in a divine flow, that the source of our good is the universal, was a concept that he practiced before he had the form to really support it. Isn't that amazing? So we must act as if we are the person we want to be. And we must learn to love who we are now. As I said, it's been a really fun journey to do this marathon, because even when I was a jock, I wasn't that good of a jock, I just have to say, So it's like, I think I'll go hang out with 400 jocks, who'll know? Well, it turns out there were some other pleasantly plump people, so I was happy to see that. And but looking around and going, okay, if I'm going to judge myself against the elite runners, if I'm going to judge me about anything other than me, then I'm going to be disappointed, right? I do have to admit I took some secret pleasure when the little old lady from Boise, who must have been 70 years old, kind of pulled up lame as I was passing her. Like, take that. Is it wrong to take pleasure in beating somebody with a cane and a pacemaker? I mean, no. 3.5 hours is a long time to live in my head. Gosh. But the truth is, I did this thing for me. And so I realized I need to run my race. I can't run Michael's. Now I definitely know I can't run Michael's, but that was not mine to do. So mine was do this thing. Work through the thing. Prepare, learn. I could spend a lot of time, I won't, on all the lessons. But the joy is to recognize in loving who we are now creates the space for greater good to come into our life. If we hate who we are now and we think that by changing the form we'll somehow be different, we're mistaken. It's a kind of a paradox, isn't it? That being creates the space for becoming. And it is in that place that we are open to, receptive to our greater good. Been thinking about this as we're moving into a new building. And the illusion might be that once we get in our building, boy, then we really become a ministry, right? And what that means is really, no, that just gives us a house, and it will free up all kinds of energy that we're currently spending on setting up and tearing down and all that, to just say, okay, now we can plan. Now we can look at who are we calling to be now? But if we would mistake that we will become something more, when that happens, that would be a mistake. Our ministry is happening today, right here. How do we treat each other with extraordinary love and compassion and joy now? And yes, we're making room for a new form that houses even more of us to become even more of who we want to be. It's a beautiful thing. I'm excited about where we're going. But I have no illusion that it is then that we become something. It just supports who we are. Well, there's about 3 more talks that I should give today, but I think I won't. I will say this. Emerson said to us so beautifully, imitation is suicide. Be who you are. There's a passage that he, in Self-Reliance, which is just such a classic understanding of be authentic, be yourself. And he speaks to this idea of loving yourself at every point in your journey. And he says this, these roses out under my window make no reference to former roses or to better ones. They are for what they are. They exist with God today. There is no time to them. There is simply the rose. It is perfect in every moment of its existence. Before a leaf bud has burst, its whole life acts. In the full-blown flower, there is no more. In the leafless root, there is no less. Its nature is satisfied, and its satisfied nature in all moments alike. I remember being a young, thin, healthy person. I remember being 21. And I had a rock-hard body, believe it or not. And I think, oh, to be that again, oh, please. I would not trade the amount of wisdom and clarity and understanding that I have now. I mean, I'll take old and wise against young and crazy. And yet, there's a perfection. That's what he's speaking to, that the rose is just being the rose in all of its life. We judge it as the perfect rose, but the rose is in its perfection all of the time. We would do well to learn from that experience, that we are each perfect expressions of the one, each perfect and unique expressions of this one light that has only one opportunity to express itself fully and uniquely as me and as you. And we would do well to love that, to honor that, to be that, and allow the more to become what it is. So just know that wherever you are on this journey, that you are fully loved and supported in being that highest self. Let us pray. As we turn inward, honoring and acknowledging this one life, the only life that there is, the life of spirit, and recognize that this presence is everywhere and every time available, revealing itself in and through and as all of creation, making itself known as all life. We open our hearts and our minds to identify with that as our true and divine self. We open ourselves to that higher possibility that is seeking its self-expression in us, through us now. And so in this moment, we choose love. We choose forgiveness. We choose acceptance. As we stand and bear witness to this infinite intelligence, making itself known through us and as us this day. Realizing the true nature of who we are is one of wholeness. Allowing that wholeness to express itself as health, as well-being, as vitality. We stand witness to the power and the presence of divine love that heals and transforms all life, that makes itself known through satisfying and nurturing relationships. We bear witness to the ever-present reality of infinite abundance, that there is indeed a divine intelligence that is the source of all that is, and so we joyously allow ourselves to live in divine flow. How good it is to be at peace, to choose to recognize our true and holy nature, and to allow more of that to be revealed. How grateful I am to bear witness to this presence and this power, lifting us up. For I know that we are blessed beyond measure. And so as we speak this word of truth, we simply extend a blessing from this place. We bless this spiritual community. For I am knowing that we are divinely guided into our highest right action. I am knowing that we are a blessing to the world. We speak our word for our brothers and sisters around the planet, for the planet itself. We're sensing and feeling and knowing a planet at peace, a world that works for everyone. And as always, we bless all priests, rabbis, ministers, teachers of every faith. For we delight in the many pathways for spiritual understanding and spiritual unfoldment. How good it is to be at peace. And so as I speak this word of truth, simply inviting you to embody your highest possibility, your unique expression and your unique contribution to the world. And to allow that to come forth and to guide and direct your thought, your word, your action. How good it is. And so in joy and gratitude, then I simply release this word into that law of mind, which knows what to do, how to do it for the highest good of all concerned. In joy and gratitude, then, I simply release this word, knowing it is so, as together we say, and so it is.